Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the third edition of the High Performance Board series. It's a special privilege we have today to welcome the Chairman of Nestlé, Vice Chair of L'Oréal, Board Member of Roche, Paul Bulcke. Paul, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.
So, Paul, what I would like to address today are really two topics of board work. The first one is the work you do at Nestlé around stakeholders and the creating shared value concept. And the second one is really about organizational health. And both of these have been crucial during the pandemic. So I would like to start with stakeholders and your view of your work from the board. We're talking about board work here, from the board and its evolution recently during the pandemic, before, after. How do you see that?
Well, look, first of all, we were very early on to identify that there was something coming because we are so much present in China. And we had actually three dimensions there to encapsulate it. The first one was safety. Safety of our employees, and their families, because that's what you care for. You care about your people. The second one was, with an A, activity. Stay close to what you're good at, which is producing food. Even more important in a crisis like this. So maintain the activity as intense as possible and rewire. So we have safety, activity, and then the third one is solidarity. And that's where the creating shared value comes in. That's the fundamental way we go about our business, is creating value for all stakeholders. If you want to be as a company successful over time, you have to create value for shareholders, which is successful as a company. But you have to create value also for society. And that is customers, employees, the communities you're working in. Now, that is actually much more visible in a crisis like COVID. So SAS, safety, activity, solidarity. Solidarity is all about what we do.
Tell us about the organizational health and how you look at this from the board. Because obviously the pandemic has been hugely transformative, right?
At the end of the day, I always say, what is the job of a board? And the job of a board is to have a good articulation of the what, the why, and the how of a company, famous, purpose, and how you go, the social responsibility, what we call creating shared value, and the why is a purpose. And then to have the right people in place, very important. Then to have the right structure. It is also the right balance between short-term and long-term. And then when you have a crisis, there's a bit of steering to be done, balancing things. We were decentralized. And that helped us again to get through this very fast because we had short supply chains. We produce and sell 90% plus for what we sell is produced locally, short supply chains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are principles confirmed as, and somewhere the board has to make sure that we maintain these principles.
I saw a study that was saying that a majority of board members now think that there is too much pressure on ESG from investors. That was just before the crisis. Obviously, ESG is a major driver of investors' thinking today. Nestlé is part of the FTSE4Good index. How do you look at the ESG movement from the investor side?
Well, look, first of all, ESG per se, it's called ESG, but the Global Compact, and it's many years that it is like ramping up a bit.
Right.
Which we embraced it for a long time, but it is ramping up so that the explicit, it starts to be much more explicit. Even just before the crisis, environment has jumped on the scene dramatically and very forcefully. Environment, and now we saw a little bit of the crisis shift towards the S dimension of ESG. That's governance right. Was there before. Environment jumped on the scene. Now it's a little bit more S. It's also the job of a board to maintain that balance of ESG. That's what the board should do, see the context and maintain the balance. That's why also you need a composition of the board that gives that possible balance too. People from certain angles with certain intensities on certain specifics. You know our board, how we have complementary. And they complement each other geographically, background, experiences, etc. And that helps because you have views from all angles on a global problem. COVID is a global problem. So that helps, again, to have a better judgment. You know, Didier, the biggest challenge, actually, and with this crisis, is even more, it's clearer even. The biggest challenge and the biggest obligation of duty of a board or leadership in general, be it societal, company-wise, etc., is to have judgment capacity.
Right.
Because the biggest challenge in our society, it is volatility, the famous VUCA, volatility, and so many opinions.
That's right.
How do you judge?
Yeah.
And judgment is always better served with complementarity of minds.
Yeah.
And that is what the board should do. That's the role of the chairman, to make sure he has the board that can serve the CEO, supported, ask the right questions. You know that I'm strong on this. A board should ask the right questions. They should not give the answers per se. So, and you can only ask the right questions when you have that complementarity of judgment capacity, and
Of course.
to serve the wisdom necessary for getting through these ambiguous world. There is not a world anymore of good, wrong, or east-west. It's ambiguous.
My very last question, Paul, to you would be on around your employees, actually, all around the world. Many of them have worked from home, right? And many of them have been affected in a deep way. Is there something from the board side that you look at there?
You see, you should not have the board as a very, very far away, ivory tower think tank thing. So that's important, to keep some empathy. Yet, don't make sure you don't steal the thunder of the executive team. They are the leaders, they are the people in the front line, they are, etc. But just transmit that the full support that they have from the board is something that just adds to their inspirational leadership, and that's what we try to do. And that's actually the job of a chairman too. It is, look, you know what I say, it is nose in, hands out. And so I am very close to what's happening, etc., making sure that I'm privileged with a fantastic executive board. And but don't start mingling in too much. What we have today is thanks to the people before us forging, chewing, elaborating, deepening convictions, principles, values, structures, hardware, software, people. Our job is to make sure that we build further on this in an explicit understanding of the context of the world that is changing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. A long history, a long-term view as well. And it's never a given, right? It's still hard work.
Never a given.
Thank you so much.
But it's worthwhile living for. Okay, Didier.
Thanks
all the
so
best
much.
to you.
Really appreciate it.
Right.
Bye-bye.
See you.